Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for Safety and Handling of Phosphates webinar with our speaker, Darin Skutt with Carus. I'm Ashley Clark, Marketing Specialist, also with Carus. A few housekeeping items before we get started. All attendees are in listen-only mode to help cut down on any background noise. If you have questions, we encourage you to submit those throughout the presentation using the question pane in the GoToWebinar panel or email us directly. If you submit questions through GoToWebinar, we will receive a report with the question and your contact information to follow up directly after the webinar. If you are interested in receiving a PDF or recording of the presentation, please contact us. We encourage you to share the recording within your network. Here are a few ways to find us. We have listed our website and general sales and marketing email address, as well as my email address. Do you receive our email blasts for upcoming webinars, presentations, trade shows, and technical information on our various solutions? If not, sign up on our website. You can find the Join Our Email list on any of our landing pages on the right-hand side. Be sure to select the industry when signing up to ensure you receive the most targeted information for your needs. And we can't forget to mention our social media platforms. We encourage you to connect with our Carus Corporation page, as well as our team members on LinkedIn, where we're often sharing upcoming events, including webinars, industry articles or news, sharing relevant posts from other industry experts, and more. Listed here are links you can visit for both upcoming webinars and then also our website. At this time, I would like to take the opportunity to introduce our speaker, Mr. Darin Skutt. Darin has worked for Carus Corporation for over 20 years. As the technical marketing specialist, Darin conducts laboratory testing and product demonstrations for Carus's municipal, industrial, and environmental customers and prospective new customers. These product demonstrations include technical training, safety presentations, and installation of safe chemical handling and dosing systems. He is a graduate of Illinois Wesleyan University in Bloomington, Illinois, with a Bachelor of Science degree in Chemistry, ACS certified. Mr. Skutt is a member of AWWA, Water Environment Federation, and the American Chemical Society.
Want to start here at the very beginning, just talking a little bit about general phosphate uses in drinking water treatment. Phosphate products are used for two main applications in drinking water treatment. They're used in corrosion control, getting into compliance with the current lead and copper rule and the proposed rule that is currently out. Typically, when we talk about corrosion control, we talk about things like orthophosphates or zinc orthophosphates or blended ortho-polyphosphates that can be used for corrosion control. In the case of sequestration, this is tying up iron, manganese, hardness to keep it in suspension. And we'll talk about blended polyorthophosphates or polyphosphates directly. There's a study been done by AWA, American Water Works Association, and greater than 50% of all water utilities use some type of phosphate-based product in their drinking water treatment before they send it out the door to the end user. What we're really talking about with phosphates is really improving the finished water quality going out the door to the consumer so they don't see these issues in their homes. Obviously, one of the big ones is calcium carbonate scale control. If you have a high hardness water, it can restrict the pipes, plug your water meters out there in the system. Obviously, we want to prevent that. In the case of iron and manganese, what we're trying to do is prevent them from precipitating out when they come in contact with chlorine and prevent colored water, whether it be red water, brown water, black water out there in the distribution system. Finally, for pipe corrosion control, what we're really talking about is protecting the plumbing in the consumer's home. So this would be the lead service line running from the distribution main to the home, and then the copper plumbing with possibly lead solder in the home, and then what brass fixtures they may have. Obviously, the lead and copper rule regulates water plants for what the permissible level is at the consumer's tap. So we want to make sure that we're in compliance with that part of the regulation as well. One of the things to keep in mind when we're using phosphate products before we get into the safety and handling is that phosphates are products that we come into contact with on a daily basis in our life. They're a food additive in many of the items that we eat on a daily basis. Whether it be bread or donuts, they're used as a leavening agent, and they can be anywhere from 100 ppm to several thousand ppm in those products. They're also a dairy emulsifier used in cheese, on our pizza, our cheeseburger, and that'll be several hundred ppm to several thousand ppm as well. If you choose to drink soda, a can of Coke, can of Pepsi, if you turn the ingredient list over on the back of a can of soda, you'll see phosphoric acid listed as one of the ingredients that we drink on a daily basis as well. Typically greater than 1% phosphoric acid. So 5,000, 10,000 parts per million in that. In drinking water treatment, we're typically treating at a much lower level of 1 to 2 milligrams per liter when we add it to drinking water to protect for lead copper corrosion or for sequestration. Phosphates are also used as a lot of pharmaceutical additives. They're in your toothpaste. If you turn the tube over, they'll be listed as a plaque inhibitor, a whitening agent. They're also used in vitamin manufacture or other types of drug manufacture. You can see phosphorus as one of the ingredients when you take a multivitamin. By far the most common use and the most common type of phosphate that we come in contact with is the fertilizer that we use to fertilize our grass or our garden that we may have at home or our flowers. By far the largest use is that 80% of the worldwide market for phosphorus is in fertilizers. And then we also see some phosphate in cleaners and detergents. So the laundry that you use, the dishes that you wash could have phosphate in those products as well, although a lot of them have replaced phosphate with other compounds. But they're things that we come in contact with on a daily basis. So phosphate has to be handled with care, but it is in a ton of things that we come in contact with on a daily basis. Our intention is to provide a broad overview of the important safety issues and to explain how the GHS global harmonization standard requirements have impacted the phosphate products in the last few years. Chemical safety is a very complex topic with many different components. This webinar is going to address a variety of the important topics ranging from regulatory standards, worker exposure, chemical reactivity, disposal of wastes, and ultimately the disposal of the empty containers. I will cover as many of these topics as I can in the presentation, but remember that we have many safety experts on staff who stay up to date on the newest information. They can always be consulted at any time after the completion of this webinar. By the way of introduction, I'd like you to know that Carus Corporation is a member of the American Chemistry Council, ACC. And as a member, we participate in the ACC's Responsible Care Initiative that you see here on the screen. There are several important principles that form the program, but none more important than to protect the safety of our workplace staff and the safety of our customer staff. Today's program is one part of our ongoing Carus customer safety communication efforts. As part of responsible care as well, we also want to make sure our facility is secure, that we reduce our emissions to the environment, and that we're energy efficient. So all those play a role in the responsible care initiative and how we communicate to our customers. So let's start. This presentation is going to be split into two halves. The first half is going to deal with products that have some safety hazards that we'll go over, and that's specifically going to deal with our orthophosphate and zinc orthophosphate products. They're typically considered corrosion control chemicals because they can't do any sequestration. It's the low pH, along with sometimes if it has a zinc component, that drive the rules that govern the safe storage, transport, handling, and disposage of these products. Orthophosphate and zinc orthophosphate products are manufactured, packaged, and delivered in two forms. Delivered as a dry powder that you see pictured, or as a clear liquid as pictured in the beaker. They are very similar in the active agreement, which is orthophosphate, or if it's a zinc ortho, it contains both orthophosphate and zinc. And regardless of the form, they'll have kind of the same safety regulations. One thing that you'll notice is there are varying concentrations depending on whether it's in dry form versus liquid form. As far as products that you may be familiar with or purchasing from Carus, on the dry powder side, we have products like Carus 3050, 3150, 3350. On the case of concentrated liquids, we would have Carus 3080, 3090, 3200, as you can see in the list, and then some in the 4000 series at 4100 and 4105. Each of our products will have a specific data sheet and an SDS associated with it that will go through this information. Communicating the potential hazards and precautionary actions, specific worker protections, and remediation options is accomplished by Carus through a variety of different methods. In addition to this webinar, we also have several common routes that you'll see as a customer of our products. As our understanding of product application evolves or as regulations change, these communication routes may also be reformatted or revised. One of the big ones was the change several years ago to the Global Harmonized System, GHS, for hazard communication. There was a drive for consistency in the way information is delivered worldwide. What you'll see are the many ways that we communicate, whether it be safety data sheets, SDSs. In Europe, with REACH, it'll be a chemical safety report. You also will see it as package labels on our product containers. Also could be pictograms on those labels and on our data sheets. And then also the warning placards that would be on the truck delivering the product as well, or on the bulk tank. The safety data sheet is still our most important safety literature piece. The GHS compliant safety sheet replaces the previous, which you would have in the past, material safety data sheet. So you can contact Carus Corporation to get the current SDS for the product that you're purchasing from us. The switch to this new name as SDS says that the SDS is now going to be in a new 16-section format, although that was the format that we used to use in the past. A special note, when you look at the first page of a safety data sheet, you will see the new red, black, and white pictograms on the front page of all of our SDSs. Each of our products will have its own specific SDS, and we'll talk about the hazards. When we specifically talk about orthophosphates and zinc orthophosphate chemicals, they are considered hazardous chemicals. Those pictograms will show that we're corrosive, that we do have some specific target organ toxicity for the respiratory tract and lungs, and we also do have some aquatic toxicity. Depending on the product that you have and the solid forms, they'll be anywhere from 40% to 65% active. Those products are pretty stable under normal conditions. One thing to keep in mind when you're feeding a dry phosphate product is they will pick up moisture from the air, so they will lump and clump if you keep them in humid conditions. So you only want to open the package and use the product as quickly as possible or make it into solution rather than leaving the container open for weeks where it could pick up moisture from the air. These products are incompatible with strong bases and oxidizing agents because of the low pH that they can form. In the liquid forms of our products, they'll be anywhere from 10% to 30% active as the ingredient. They are also stable under normal conditions, but they are also incompatible with strong bases and oxidizing agents. One thing to make sure, read and understand the safety data sheet related to your product and all the product labels on the product packaging when you get it. Here are the new health hazard pictograms that are required for the liquid zinc orthophosphate products. These pictograms apply to all package sizes. The health and safety categories are also new and are based on the latest research data. If you'd like to know more detail about each of the category definitions above, the OSHA.gov website will provide all the appropriate labels. What you will see is the health hazard pictogram has the corrosive symbol, which stands for skin corrosion irritation, which is category 1. And then also the serious eye damage irritation, which is also category 1, which is the symbol with a liquid pouring onto a piece of metal or onto a hand. The other pictogram talks about specific target organ toxicity, category 3, respiratory, and then specific target organ repeated, category 1, lung, which is a symbol of the person with the star in the middle. In addition to the new pictograms, what you also will see highlighted is signal words, hazard statements, and precautionary statements that are new to the phosphate labels and to the SDS itself. They are designed to better define the health and safety impacts of the product being used to the person handling those products. If signal words are required, there are only two to choose from: warning or danger. The signal word for phosphate is danger for the zinc orthophosphate and orthophosphate-based products. This is the new hazard statement for phosphate. It reflects the potential health hazards as well as the chemistry of phosphate. For example, it identifies the corrosive potential. As evidenced in the hazard statement, it causes severe skin burns and eye damage, may cause respiratory irritation, causes damage to organs, lungs through prolonged or repeated exposure. And then the last statement talking about toxic to aquatic life with long-lasting effects. These are the new phosphate precautionary statements. The wording is specific to the zinc orthos and orthophosphate products and linked to the physical hazard associated with them. So on the package label and on the SDS, you will see prevention. Do not breathe mist or vapor. So if you are using a pump to meter this into the air and the line broke and was spraying the solution into the air, you do want to protect yourself from breathing in that mist or vapor. Wear protective gloves, protective clothing, eye protection, face protection. That's to prevent you from getting the low pH of this product onto yourself and causing damage from the corrosivity. And then finally, avoid release to the environment. So you don't want to spill this into a waterway or outside the fence line of your property. Precautionary statement response: if by accident you were to swallow the meat product, rinse the mouth, do not induce vomiting. If the product were to get on your skin or hair, take off all your contaminated clothing, rinse your skin with a water shower, and then wash your contaminated clothing before reuse. If you were to inhale a mist or a vapor, remove that person to fresh air and keep comfortable for breathing. Finally, if you were to get this product in your eyes, rinse cautiously with water for several minutes. Remove contact lenses if you were to have them in. Continue rinsing. And then if exposed to this, call a poison center doctor for further information. Or if you were to have a spill, collect the spillage prior to you treating it to neutralize it, to remove it. If you were to store this product, you should store it locked up on your facility. And as far as disposal, you want to dispose of the contents containers in accordance with your local, regional, national, and international regulations. This is the only environmental hazard that applies to these phosphate products. Because phosphate's environmental impact is related to the quantity of material that may be released, this pictogram only applies to the very large packages. But what you'll see is the environmental hazard is hazardous to aquatic environment, acute, category 1, and then there also is a long-term hazard, which is listed as category 1 as well. Lastly, this is the new pictogram that we talked about earlier, just showing you it again, that physical hazards for these products are they are corrosive to metals because of the low pH at category 1. So now that we know the 3 pictograms that would be on a phosphate or a zinc orthophosphate-based product, one of the things we should review is the important discussion of worker protections. The safety data sheet still contains recommendations for personal protective equipment. By following these recommendations, exposure would be minimized or could even be eliminated, and the health hazards would be negated. So let's look at these in detail. Specifically, when you look at our SDS, it'll list several categories. Provide ventilation when handling this product in case there's a dust or a mist that could irritate your respiratory tract. Eye protection should be worn when handling these products. Depending on the type of handling you would do, safety glasses, a side shield, goggles, or a face shield. Avoid skin contact with phosphate, so wear work clothing and then wear plastic gloves or an apron. Do not eat or drink the phosphate, but read and understand both the safety data sheet and the product labels for the specific phosphate product that you're using. In the case of this first one, provide adequate ventilation. The inhalation exposure scenarios for phosphate products, typically we think of most for the dry products, strictly because the dry product can be dusty, and so that dry product can get into the air, you breathe in the dust, and it can irritate your respiratory tract. So in the case of the dry products, when handling them, one of the things you want to keep in mind is how much transferring are you going to do to the hopper, how much dust could possibly be released from transferring that product. So you should avoid breathing it. And one of the ways to prevent you breathing it in is using a dust mask or a dust respirator when you're handling these products. Now, there are some things to keep in mind when you are handling a liquid product. Generally, in the case of a liquid product, there should be no mist in the air. But if you were to have the case where a feed line were to break or a line was pressurized and a break formed in the line, then that product, because it was under pressure, could be sprayed out into the air into a mist form, and you could breathe it in at that point. At that time, you'd want to use some type of dust or mist respirator to prevent it from getting into your lungs at that point. It is the customer's duty to determine how much risk of dust or mist is in their application and to protect against that risk on their site for how they're going to be handling the product prior to the workers handling it. The eyes are very sensitive tissues and must be protected from both phosphate dust particles and the liquid droplets. One of the things to keep in mind are the dry phosphate crystals are sharp as of their crystalline nature and can be abrasive if you get in your eye and can scratch the eye surface or to rub your eye if you had dust in it. The crystals also are slightly on the acidic side, so they can produce a corrosive burn. So eye protection is very important when handling the dry products. Depending on how much handling you're going to do, you may want to level up your eyeglass protection. At a minimum, you want safety glasses with a side shield, but if you're going to be handling a lot of the dry product and transferring it to that hopper, then you may want to switch to splash goggles. Sometimes I've seen customers use safety glasses and put a face shield over the top to keep the dust away as well. If you're handling liquid products, same thing applies here as well. The liquid products are going to be corrosive, so pH less than 1, so they can cause that corrosive burn to the eye. And then it's also going to determine how much handling. If you're just moving a drum into place, you may use safety glasses with a side shield. But if you're going to transfer the product from a drum or a container to a bulk tank, where the line will be under pressure, then you may want to switch to splash goggles or to a face shield to prevent that contact. Just keep in mind the application, the things you're working on when you're handling these products, and what would happen in a worst case scenario, and level up your PPE based on that for eye protection. Because of their corrosive nature, one of the things you'll want to keep in mind when handling both either the dry product or the liquid products is you'll want to wear gloves at a minimum, and then most likely a protective apron so you can protect it from soaking through your clothes and getting on your body if you were to have a spill. Contact with the concentrated solutions, because of the corrosive nature of them, can damage the skin. So it's just a good idea to wear this protection when you're handling the products. One of the things to keep in mind, I talked earlier about how we can eat or drink different phosphate products in our food that we have on a daily basis, or in other pharmaceuticals like vitamin pills or toothpaste that we have. One thing to keep in mind is those levels are much different than the concentrated products that you purchase from us. When you purchase our phosphate products, you're not to eat or drink the neat product or any kind of other chemical that you're handling. When you're handling these products, you want to wash your hands before eating, drinking, or smoking. These products, because of their low pH, can be very corrosive, so they can cause severe burns to the mouth, throat, esophagus, and stomach. They're acid-based. If ingestion of the phosphate occurs, you do want to immediately rinse the mouth, drink plenty of water. If the victim is unconscious or having convulsions, don't give them anything. You do not want to induce vomiting. If vomiting occurs, you want to keep the head low so stomach contents don't get out of the lungs. Basically, because of the corrosive nature of these products, Basically, they cause the damage if they were to get into the stomach and cause damage on the way back out for this. And it's all based on concentration and pH level for these phosphate products. I now want to discuss how to properly store phosphate products and the potential hazardous conditions that you should be aware of. Phosphate products are manufactured and packaged in containers made of compatible materials. When phosphate is repackaged into smaller container sizes, the proper container material should be used. Under normal conditions, phosphate products are very stable and have a shelf life of many months. Typically, we recommend using our phosphate products within 1 year. Cautionary statements regarding the proper storage reflect the concerns of accidental leakage or spills from the original packages, mixing with incompatible materials on the warehouse floor or in the drainage system at the place you're at. In the warehouse, one of the things you do want to keep in mind is to be aware that lift truck forks can puncture a phosphate package and cause a leak. Phosphate leaks from a damaged container can react with other materials that may be on the phosphate, on the warehouse floor. Some kind of good housekeeping to keep in mind with phosphate products. You do not want to expose zinc orthos and orthophosphates to extreme temperatures. If these products were to freeze and then thaw back out, some of the ingredients will crash out and the product will no longer look clear. It'll take on a milky white appearance. You do want to keep in mind you don't want to store these products in your warehouse next to strong caustics because you are a strong acid at pH less than 1, so you'll have a neutralization reaction go on. You also want to keep these things away from something like bleach, which has a high pH, because the combination of bleach and these products at a very low pH would cause the chlorine to off-gas from solution as the pH drops from the addition of these products. There's other products you can see listed, like hydrofluoric or hydrofluorosilicic acid that can cause precipitation when they come in contact with these products. If these products were involved in a fire, they may form toxic fumes of phosphorus, zinc, oxides, hydrogen chloride, depending on the components, sulfur, sodium, and or chlorine. So it really depends on the specific product you're getting and what's listed on the SDS. You can find these things on section 7 of the SDS for your specific product. This is the NFPA hazard code diamond that you'll see on our SDSs. Specifically for orthophosphates and zinc orthophosphate products, the health hazard is listed as a 3. Under fire conditions, this product will give off irritating combustion products. Flammability hazard is 0. They're non-flammable, will not burn, but will support combustion. The reactivity hazard is listed as 0. They're normally stable, not reactive with water. And the special hazard will tend to be none depending on the product. Sometimes you also see the corrosive symbol depending on the specific product you're using. If a phosphate product was involved in a fire, you can use multiple ways to extinguish this fire. Large quantities of water, CO2, powders, or foam can be used to extinguish these fires related to phosphate. One thing to keep in mind when you're fighting a fire with these products, you do want to burn to contain the water because you'll have phosphate content, and if it's a zinc ortho, you'll have zinc content that you want to protect from getting out to the environment as well. Fire extinguishing is listed in section 5 of the SDS. Some facilities use the NFPA diamond. There is also the HMIS hazard code that you can use as well on some packaged containers in some states. The health hazard for these products is going to be listed as a 3, which talks about fire conditions can give off irritating combustion products. The flammability hazard is 0. So the same as the NFPA diamond, non-flammable, does not burn, can support combustion. Reactivity hazard is 0, normally stable, not reactive with water. The difference with an HMIS label versus an NFPA diamond is the HMIS label lists a protective equipment category, which talks about what you should use if you're handling these products. For these types of products, the category is E, which says safety glasses, gloves, and a dust respirator or mist respirator at a minimum when you're handling these products. But you can refer to your exact SDS for which ones you need to use when using those products. If you were to have a spill of your phosphate product, especially of a dry product, the powders, you want to clean up immediately by sweeping or shoveling the product. Because these are typically going into drinking water, you don't want to return them to the original drum or the original container that you're then feeding in the drinking water, because unless you have knowledge of what was on the floor before, that would be contamination that you would then transfer into the product and then transfer into the water that you're treating with it. So you'll want to take that product that you've spilt on the floor, transfer it to a clean drum, and then dispose of it according to approved local regulations. Refer to section 13 of the SDS. In the case of a liquid phosphate spill cleanup, one of the first things you're want to do is contain or isolate the liquid by either collecting it in a pit or a holding area, or burn the product to keep it in place so that it doesn't get outside that area. Once the liquid product is contained, you'll want to absorb it with inert media and dispose of it properly according to local regulations. You do not want to flush these products to the sewer based on their low pH and their zinc content. If you can avoid it, you don't want any runoff into storm sewers or anything that leads directly to a waterway, because that references back to the pictogram for aquatic toxicity as well. If you were to have a spill, depending on the specific product, you will be required to report it to the required agencies as a CERCLA reportable quantity. This is also listed in section 13 of the SDS. If you are transporting or shipping phosphate products, the U.S. Department of Transportation Hazardous Materials Regulation are still in effect. When shipping phosphate, the proper package, labels, placards, and documents must be used. What you'll see when we ship a phosphate product is it's going to identify and classify what the hazardous material and ingredients are in those products, what the quantity limitations that can be on the truck, and what are the proper packaging that that product needs to be in. It will also describe how you have to mark and label those packages. The truck driver will have shipping certificates that will reference to the exact product that they're handling, and then also how they have to placard the vehicle transporting that shipment to your facility. So what placards will be on the truck when they make that delivery. So depending on the type of product that you're seeing, you'll see two different specific UN numbers. The first one refers to zinc orthophosphate products. So their proper shipping name would be corrosive, solid, acid, inorganic. They'll be UN 3260, and they'll have a listed reportable quantity depending on the product, but typically 1,000 pounds of contained zinc in the product. For the phosphoric acid-based products, they will be listed as a corrosive, liquid, acid, inorganic, called out as phosphoric acid. That'll be UN 3264, and that typically will have a reportable quantity of 5,000 pounds. The hazard class would be Division 8, packing group 3, and the placard that you would see on the truck would be the corrosive that you see to the right-hand side. There are two U.S. acts that regulate the release or disposal of phosphate into the environment. The Resource Conservation and Recovery Act from 1976 governs how hazardous waste may be disposed of, and phosphate falls under the corrosive toxicity designation that you see listed of the 4 characteristics. CERCLA, which governs Superfund sites, establishes what the actual reportable quantity is. So depending on your product, you'll have a reportable quantity of how much you can dispose of, and it's going to be a corrosive waste, which is why it falls under the RCRA Act. Depending on that product, it'll be zinc chloride, zinc sulfate, zinc oxide based, or phosphoric acid having that reportable quantity. Like I detailed earlier, liquid phosphates containing phosphoric acid typically have a reportable quantity of 5,000 pounds as a release to the environment. Liquid phosphates containing the zinc components will have a reportable quantity of 1,000 pounds. What that means is a release to the environment means a release outside the fence line of your property that would be going to a waterway or to the environment. If you were to spill this inside your containment on your property where it's contained and you can collect the product and dispose of it properly, that's not considered a reportable quantity. All reportable quantities if this was a release to the environment, so outside your fence line, river, stream, or to the sanitary sewer. If you were to have a reportable quantity, there's the National Response Center 800 number that you would have to call to report it. Disposal of the product and the container. Because these phosphate products, as phosphoric acid and zinc orthophosphates, are considered corrosive, they have to just be disposed of correctly. Disposal should be completed through a licensed disposal company so they can neutralize the product prior to disposal or take care of the zinc component of the product. For the packaging that you may have left behind, the packaging must be triple rinsed, basically the corrosivity or the low pH neutralized. The label then needs to be removed prior to proper recycling and disposal of those packaging. That is in section 13 of the SDS. As I talked about earlier, there are two very distinct classes basically of phosphate products. So what we've covered there was zinc orthophosphates and phosphoric acid based products, which have either zinc or low pHs. The other products that we'll talk about will be blended phosphate products, and you're going to see through these next slides there's very different safety regulations for these products. In the case of these products, they'll be both as dry powders like Carus 2150, 2350, or they can be concentrated liquids like 4200, 8100, 8700. Could also be our Aquamag product line or our CalciQuest product line or our Aquadine product line that you'll see out there in the field. They will look clear in solution like you see in the beaker, and the dry powders will look very similar as well to our zinc ortho and orthophosphate based products. But keep in mind the SDSs and the safety hazards are completely different. We have the same safety and communication that we will do with these products that we do with the hazardous products. So you'll see the same safety data sheets, the same chemical safety report for Europe and REACH. You'll see package labels, pictograms, and warning placards on these products as well. So why are these so different? Blended phosphate products are considered not hazardous chemicals. Why is that? Their pH is typically neutralized, and they don't contain zinc, which is considered hazardous as well. So they're missing the two ingredients that make the other products hazardous. In the solid forms, blended phosphates can be anywhere from 50 to 90% active in the dry form. They're stable under under normal conditions. Same thing applies here with the dry blended orthopolyphosphates that you may buy, or a dry orthophosphate product that you may buy. They will pick up moisture from the environment, so they will get lumpy, so you do want to protect that container from damage so they don't pick up moisture, but they are stable under normal conditions. In the liquid forms, these products are anywhere from 10% to 40% active in your environment as well. Each of these products will have its own specific safety data sheet related to what components are in that product. Specifically, what you'll notice on this safety data sheet, the blended phosphates will not have a signal word. Whereas you saw in the past, we had danger for the zinc ortho and phosphoric acid-based products. You also see that the hazard statements and precautionary statements are very different than the ones that we detailed earlier for the zinc ortho and orthophosphate products. The hazard statement is now for a blended orthopolyphosphate. The mixture does not meet the criteria for classification because it's not considered hazardous. There's no pictogram associated with this. For the precautionary statements for the blended orthopolyphosphates, you can see that they're much more minimized. Prevention, observe good industrial hygiene practices. Response, wash hands after handling. Storage, store away from incompatible materials. And disposal, dispose of waste and residues in accordance with local authority and requirements. You can see these are much more reduced based on the hazard classification of no hazard for these products. As far as the environmental and physical hazards, there's none, so no pictograms related to those as well for the blended orthopolyphosphate products as well. We do still want to discuss worker safety when handling these products as well. Even though they're considered non-hazardous, you do want to take some PPE requirements. Some of the things that we'll keep in mind is you do want to provide adequate ventilation because the dust still can be irritating even though it's not corrosive. Eye protection should be worn and avoid skin contact with the phosphate. But read and understand the safety data sheet and the specific product label for the blended orthopolyphosphate that you're using. Specifically on inhalation, they can be irritating. The dust can make your eyes water, can make you cough. So wearing a dust respirator if handling one of these dye products makes sense, although you don't have to worry about the corrosive nature of them because they are not. If you're handling the liquid products, you do want to keep them out of your eye, although they have a neutralized pH somewhere between 4 and 7 typically. You want to protect your eyes as well from them. Typically, what we recommend when handling the dry orthopolyphosphate products is that you wear safety glasses with side shields when handling them. This is also a case that I may upgrade if I'm going to be working on a pump or a pressurized line with these products. While they're no longer corrosive being a blended orthopoly, I may want to consider that I don't want to have to clean up or wash my eyes out if I get the product in there. So I might level up to goggles or to a face shield if I'm working on something in a pressurized situation. But generally, just moving the drums, being around the pump in a normal situation would be safety glasses with side shields. When handling these products, we typically recommend that you wear gloves just because some people can be irritated by the phosphate solutions. You could wear an apron if you wanted to protect your clothes and not have to rinse or clean them off after you exposed yourself to the blended orthopolyphosphates. So just keep in mind how much handling you're going to do, and if there's a potential for a splash, level up as well from gloves to that apron. Same thing here to keep in mind, do not eat or drink the neat phosphate or any other chemical. These are at much higher concentrations than what you would eat or drink in a food product, so you do want to keep that into mind. So if you were handling the product, you should wash your hands before eating, drinking, or smoking. If you were to ingest these phosphate products, they're not corrosive, so they won't cause the burns, but you do want to immediately rinse the mouth, drink plenty of water, and if you were to have any medical symptoms, get medical attention. This is all listed in Section 4 of the SDS on these blended phosphate products. These products are stable under normal conditions. So like I talked about earlier, your big risk with the dry products is picking up moisture from the air and getting lumpy. We talk about the shelf life for blended orthopolyphosphates as being 1 year. One thing to keep in mind with these products is polyphosphate does break down to orthophosphate over time. It's called reversion. So you will lose your sequestering ability with these products. So while the product would be stable and you wouldn't have an issue with any kind of reactivity at your facility, from a use application, you will have the loss of sequestering ability the longer you store these products. You do want to protect these products from extreme temperature changes. If these products were to freeze and thaw, you could see some loss of the sequestering ability, and you can see some salts crash out, and so the product, instead of being clear, will take on a milky white appearance. As before, you do want to take care to protect the containers from physical damage, like fork trucks poking them and having a spill on the floor that you then have to clean up. And if these products were involved in a fire, they can form toxic fumes of phosphorus. This is all listed in Section 7 of the SDS. What you can see is the NFPA diamond changes greatly when we switch from those phosphoric acid and zinc orthophosphate products to the blended orthopolys. The diamond for the NFPA now becomes 1 for a health hazard. The flammability hazard becomes 0. The reactivity hazard becomes 0. And the special hazard will always be none when handling these products. If these products were involved in a fire, you could use water, CO2, powders, or foam to extinguish the fires. Same thing here though, you do want to burn to contain the water because it will now contain phosphorus prior to your disposal of that product. Like I talked about earlier, the HMIS hazard code for the blended orthopolyphosphates, the health hazard would be 1, the flammability will be 0, the reactivity would be 0, and the minimum PPE that you should be using is safety glasses, gloves, and a dust respirator, depending on what type of handling you're doing. In the case of the dry orthopoly powdered phosphates or crystalline phosphates, you want to clean them up immediately by sweeping or shoveling them. Same thing to keep in mind here, because these products are going into finished drinking water that's going to go out the door to the consumer, you don't want to sweep or clean up the spill on the floor and immediately put it back into the container that's then going to be in the water, because you don't know what was on the floor prior to you spilling it on the floor. So transfer it to a clean drum and then dispose of it according to local regulations. In the case of liquid phosphates, in the case of these liquid blended orthos, contain or isolate the liquid in a pit or a holding area. Use material to berm it in place. You can then absorb with inert material and dispose of properly. This is all listed in section 13 of the SDS as well. One of the things to keep in mind, there is that still Department of Transportation Materials Regulation Act. Blended polyorthos also fall under that act, which identifies the classifications or certificates when handling these products as well. You'll see the change here as well. Blended phosphate products are not regulated by the Department of Transportation. They do not have a reportable quantity, and you will not see a placard on the side of the truck that shows the corrosive nature of these products because they're not. So it is one of the things to keep in mind when you're buying a blended phosphate product, that they won't have that DOT regulation and they won't have that reportable quantity. Disposal should be completed through a licensed disposal company. Because you do have phosphate content, you don't want to just dump it down to the sewer. The packaging should be rinsed, the label removed prior to proper recycling or disposal. One of the concerns with phosphate products, while these blended orthopolys are not considered hazardous, is phosphate content is something that the wastewater plant needs to remove. So you don't want to cause that excess phosphorus loading to the wastewater plant by disposing of your product. Hence the reason you should use a licensed disposal company.
Thank you, Darin. The current slide shows our sales managers along with their contact info. Feel free to reach out to yours in your region. Shown here is our presenter, Darin's contact info, as well as our sales and marketing contact info. Thank you again, Darin, and thank you everyone who tuned in to watch. Have a great day.